So let's start with number one. How do I find the inverse? Switch the x and y. So I get, let's see, x equals 1/2 y plus 1. And I solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 1, and I get x minus 1 equals 1/2 y. What's the easiest way to get rid of a fractional coefficient? Multiply by its reciprocal. This one happens to be 2, or 2 over 1. Okay, distribute. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times -1 is -2. My halves cancel with my 2 over 1, and I get y. And this is the inverse function. So I'm going to denote it with a -1. Does this match what you guys got? Good. No. This was your homework you did yesterday. Doesn't that look familiar?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, number 2. Switch the x and the y. See, I get x equals 1/4 y plus 3/4. Solve for y. See, subtract 3/4 from both sides. Way too many fractions. I'm going to skip this one at this point. I get x minus 3/4 equals 1/4 y. What's the easiest way to get rid of a fractional coefficient? In this case, it's 4, or 4 over 1. 4 times x. 4 times -3/4 is -3. And these cancel the 1. 1 times y is y. This is the inverse function, so put a minus sign there. -1. Does anybody remember what the inverse function is for a problem like 3 or 4? No. So let's go ahead and do it. So switch the x and the y, get x equals 2 over y. Multiply both sides by what?
2.
Y. So I get y times x equals 2. Then what do? Divide by x. So y inverse equals 2 over x. So number 3, what's my inverse? All right, number 5, we did, must have did, I don't even know what day it is anymore. Tuesday we did it, right? So I went ahead and graphed my original function here, y equals mx plus b, or -2x plus 8. My y-intercept was 8, and my slope was -2, or -2 over 1. So I graphed the line. Here's 8 where it crossed my y-axis. My slope was down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. And I drew that function, y equals -2x plus 8. Then I went ahead and put the y equals x line in there because it's funner. And then I went ahead, instead of trying to reflect it, because I'm not very good in geometry, I went ahead and algebraically found the inverse function by switching the x and y and solving for y. Okay? And I got -1/2 x plus 4 equals the inverse of y. This time my x-intercept was 4. My slope was -1/2. So I went ahead and graphed that line, crossed my y-axis at the y-intercept 4. Slope was negative 1/2, down 1 over 2, 2, down 1 over 2. Okay. Yeah, it's a lot of work. Graphing is not the funnest thing in the world. Let's try and do number 6. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put my y equals line in there. Y equals x. Is this what you got, Greg? Kaylee? Is this what you got? Yeah. Boy, that'd be awesome. Okay, here's my y equals x line. So it reflects about this line. Now, let's try and graph this. This is a bad equation to graph because my y-intercept is negative 12 and my slope is 4 over 1. But if I tried to put negative 12 on here, it'd be like, oh, I don't know, somewhere down here, right? And I'd have to go up for 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1. And I would just be guessing at this point. Let's find the inverse and see what we can do with that. So I'm going to switch the x and the y. So I have x equals 4y. Good. I'm going to add the 12. I'm seeing you're just reading right from your homework, huh? Good man. Okay, so I have 1/4 x plus 3 equals y inverse. Okay, so my slope is 1/4. So it crosses at 3 and up 1 over 4. And I'm going to get at least another point here. Down 1 to the left 4. Okay, so this is my inverse function. So this is our inverse function, y minus 1 equals 1/4 x plus 3. That's how we label lines, by the way. Now, if I were to try to maybe reflect the inverse function, I can kind of graph this one, although it doesn't really seem like it's going to work too well. Let's see, something like maybe something like that. That's probably more like our original function. Okay? And again, it's just an estimate. See how it's being reflected. Okay, questions, comments, concerns? Now, when I said, remember I said if we have a snow day Wednesday that you guys were supposed to do the book work? Did you do it? I didn't. All right, so you're going to do the book work now in class. This would be a good time to take your quiz if you haven't taken the quiz from last week. What? In a minute. Now, you're supposed to do 8 and 10 here up on top. Now, wherever it says graph, don't graph these. I don't want you to graph them because they're kind of complicated and you know how to graph functions already. But I want you to still find the inverses. Now, you're supposed to do numbers 8 and 10 on top. Okay? I'm going to do number 9. Number 9, you have to come up with the original functions here, right? Because all I give you is a t-chart. Well, if you look at number 9, what kind of graph do I have here? The points 1, 0, 2, 1, 3, 2. Think about that. What kind of graph would I have? It would just be a line. Y equals mx plus b, right? Now, b, I need the y-intercept to graph it, so what's b? Yeah, well, the x has to be 0. So if I were to continue this, if this x was 0, what would my y-intercept be? Careful, -1, right? So my b here is -1. Okay, what's my slope? Well, just pick 2 ordered pairs and put it in a slope formula. y2, these are my y's, minus y1 over x2 minus x1. What's 1 minus 0? And 2 minus 1? So my slope is 1. Okay, let's go ahead and put that into our line formula. So y equals my slope 1x plus b -1. So there's my original function for this t-chart. To find the inverse, well, I would switch the x and the y, right? And then solve for y. So all I would do was add 1 to x. So my y inverse is going to be x plus 1. So this is number 9. This is what you have to do for numbers 8 and 10. So I left that to my third or first hour, and they're like, they don't know how to do 8 and 10. So I gave them, because they were playing on their phones, so I actually gave them the original function. For number 8, what's my original function? What kind of function do I have? Number 8. A quadratic. I have a parabola, or we like to say parabola. Why do I have a parabola? Because it starts to repeat, right? So what does this mean? What's 2, 1? The vertex. So I have my parabola, which is x squared, and then my vertex, it shifts to the left 2, right? Because it's a positive 2. And I'm sorry. Yeah, no, that's right. Positive 2, right? No, there should be a negative. I'm sorry. -2. And then it goes up 1. Because that's a positive. If that's a positive, that has to be negative. So, yeah, remember? Okay, so here's my original function. You have to come up with the inverse for number 8. Number 10, does anybody know what kind of function that is? Now think about this. X is 0, y is 0. X is 1, y is 1. X is 2, y is 4. It's being squared. What kind of function is being squared that we learned last semester? Remember? Patrick? It's the growth function, right? Y equals AB to the X. So you have to come up with the inverse function for that. Okay? There's your functions that you have to come up with the inverses. And again, wherever it says graph, don't graph, just find the inverse. Grandes, are you good? You need any more help? Do this homework packet, and then tomorrow you do the quiz preview in class.
And then Mondays.
We'll go over the quiz preview on Monday, and Tuesday we'll take the quiz. All right? I know. I squared should, because I minus the 2 and it's in parentheses, my squared should be outside the parentheses, right? So it's x minus 2 squared plus 1. So when you switch the x and the y, after subtracting 1, what do you have to do to get rid of power 2? Square root. Okay. Got it? So it's actually, here, I better clean this up. Let me rewrite this. It's y equals x minus 2 squared plus 1. Okay. So the first thing you're going to do is switch the x and the y and then solve for y.
Got it right there. 1/2 that times.
I didn't do it yet, so I don't know what the answer is.